source of capital is. This is overlooking these roles as has been exemplified by Philippian, and therefore misses the point. Is that what you're suggesting?
You see, he is in the middle, because he wasn't the first one who asked the question. But he does accept that there is a seeming contradiction, or called paradox. And he's looking for an answer. And I don't think he claims that he has found the answer. He just kind of wants to keep the question alive, because he feels that there's something important hidden there which hasn't been found yet. That's my reading of him. He doesn't make any strong claims. He may be thinking about adding it just a little bit, but not the final disposal of the question. I know him in person. He's a very modest man, and he is not known for overstating the case. Now, perhaps I am overstating the case because I claim that my answer is this posing of the question for once and all. And I think that we just didn't have enough time. So I want to give ourselves enough time. Let's see that what I am suggesting here, that breaking down the operation into these three parts, okay? The entrepreneurial parts, because this is the guy who is taking the initiative. Oh, yes.
I want to make sure I understand. Well, you should probably finish your point, but then I have a question to make sure I understand the distinction between direct and indirect in the case of interest. But I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay. I'll do it after the comments. What did you want clarification on?
So I think I understand direct, in this case, hoarding and dishoarding, right? So every week the wage earner buys a little bit of silver, and then when he gets old, then he dishoards the silver. And obviously the disadvantage of that is dishoarding is a finite amount, and then when he runs out before he's dead, then he's out of money, and that's a problem. In the case of indirect, he is lending the silver, for which he is repaid the principal as well as the interest. And so there's never, as long as he's living only on the interest, there is never a finite point where he runs out of money. He becomes wealthier and wealthier and wealthier over time. I just want to make sure I understand what is meant by indirect, is that you're talking about lending and repayment, and that's indirect because someone else is, in fact, not dishoarding the silver, but using the silver to increase productivity. Versus just simply dishoarding. Is that the distinction?
The important thing is the presence or absence of exchange. Now, one person can do the direct conversion. Just one person. Because hoarding and dishoarding does take care of the problem. But that's not the optimal way of conversion. The optimal way can be achieved if you bring in another person. And if you have a deficit of income, a surplus of wealth, you find an opposite number who is the inverted situation, and then the exchange is ready. Now, I think that's a clear-cut distinction, isn't it? In this case, when exchange takes place, we are talking about an indirect conversion, which needs two people. But it can be done even if the government and the churches and everybody else introduces a ban on exchanges, as they did, the usury laws and so on and so forth, the entrepreneur is not at the end of his ropes, because he can fall back to the direct exchange, hoarding and dishoarding. The main disadvantage of that in comparison with the indirect exchange is that it takes longer. Now, suppose you are mentally ready to go into business, but you have a deficit of wealth. And therefore, you are looking for somebody who would make this exchange with you, and you don't find him, or you couldn't agree on the terms. For some reason, the deal falls through. Then you have to fall back to direct conversion. And that means you start saving bit by bit, payday by payday, say silver, and build up a fund, which will be your capital, but it has to be big enough, and this may take years, to convert it into capital and go into business for you, for yourself. Okay? Now, the disadvantage is that this is lost time. You have the talent already to be a good businessman, a good entrepreneur. But now you have to work for wages because you have to do the hoarding and then the dishoarding. And this is a loss not just to you in person, but to society as a whole. This is what the usury laws missed. That the entrepreneur and the capitalist is a wonderful combination, and it's beneficial not only for the two of them individually, but to the whole society. Why? Because it shrinks that period of time which is necessary for a young man to become his own boss. Now, if this takes 10 years, that's a loss for society. But it can be done, well, not instantaneously, that's perhaps too much to say, but cut it down to 1 year. You become an apprentice, and there are words so that journeyman and whatever stages, and then you become a fully fledged. But you still need capital. And if the artificial laws and social limitations prevent you to make that exchange with somebody, then you fall back to hoarding. This happened. There are all kinds of stories, about the shoe shine boy who started doing shining shoes in front of a department store, and he saved silver dimes and ultimately bought the department store and became the owner. He was just an outsider, shining shoes. Or the paper boy was delivering newspapers to the different addresses and really getting a fraction of a dime for each paper delivered. But when he had enough, he put it aside and so on. And ultimately, he had enough to buy the newspaper. He was the owner of the newspaper, which he was delivering as a young boy. So that's an example how direct conversion still survived to our own days, because this is what you can call original accumulation of capital. I mean, the young boy, nobody would lend him money to buy a business, but he was ambitious enough, wanted to have an early start, and from a newspaper boy, paper boy, became the owner of newspaper. There are many examples of that. By the way, as an example of Warren Buffett, and if you are not familiar with his name, he is considered the greatest investor of our age or all time. I don't know.
Not anymore.
Okay, I agree with you. But let me tell you, he's exactly my age, and so his father was a congressman in Washington, D.C., a very good congressman, certainly a gold standard advocate. He introduced the gold standard bill in every Congress of which he was member. And this was always the good type of gold standard, which called for gold coin circulation, as opposed to the gold exchange standard where paper circulates backed by gold, but that's not the same thing. So there he was, and young Howard. No, Howard was the father, and I'm talking about Warren, the son. He was in, say, 1950. It was the time when his father was. They are from Nebraska, Omaha, and but they had to move to Washington, and Warren was a paper boy. He was delivering the newspaper. Well, he didn't become a newspaper king because that wasn't his ambition, but there was some family business. I'm not saying that they were penniless, but that was a very modest local business in Omaha. And what he did is when he had enough savings out of his own earnings, delivering newspapers, he made clever investments. And I mean, he is still one of the wealthiest people in the United States, and that's more or less his own business ingenuity. He's just built up that huge wealth. So I thought these are interesting examples.
Do you agree that also in this case we can see that the most important part is the manager part, the most important part is the knowledge how to make money? Because without this part, capital and entrepreneurship is just wasting time and money if they are not doing the right thing in the right way. Would you agree with this?
Do you agree that the manager is the most
The manager?
Yeah, the most important.
No, entrepreneur. There's no question.
What is the definition of entrepreneur? The young man.
He's the one that says, "I want to buy that tree."
Yeah.
Because I have an idea of making apple juice or something.
Yes, but does he have the knowledge? Because he can go and ask for money. The capitalist gives him money, and then he's full of energy, he's young, he's planting the tree in the shadow. And after 3 weeks, the tree will die. So the capitalist will lose money. This young, energetic guy will lose a lot of time and energy because there was no
We have to hire a manager who's clever enough to hire a manager.
Well, sure. I mean, you know, you're not going to establish an airline and then not hire any pilots. You know. Rudy. Sorry, Rudy's got to come in here. Rudy.
I'm an entrepreneur. I'm responsible. It's my call. Who to hire, who to get the money from. And if I go to that capitalist and I don't show him a good business plan that says, here's how I'm going to make money, it's not going to happen. And don't forget, if the company loses, I'm the first one to take a hit. But if the company makes real good profits, I get the benefits. So I'm taking the risk. That's the entrepreneur. If I don't, I'm not the entrepreneur.
So the entrepreneur is somehow including the manager?
No, he knows how to hire a manager.
He could be a manager himself.
I could be a manager, but I don't want to know. I know how to do the apple tree, and I keep an eye on my manager to make sure he manages my apple tree the way I want it managed. And if you don't do a good job, manager, somebody else will do the job.
The manager is central to the entrepreneur. They have the entrepreneur, and there's not going to be a manager.
So the entrepreneur has also the knowledge.
Questions?
We're just insert one thing here, having done this. The entrepreneur has to have enough knowledge of things not to plant the tree in shape.
Yeah.
If the entrepreneur is that dumb, he's going to lose his money no matter who he hires, because he won't even be able to hire a good manager. Because there's going to be two managers interviewing for the job. And one's going to say, oh, you're so smart, oh, you're so smart. And the other one's going to say, don't plant it over there. If you don't rip it out right now and put it in the sun, it's going to die. And if the entrepreneur doesn't understand the distinction, he's going to hire the guy who's kissing up rather than... The entrepreneur has to understand enough of how things work to make rational decisions, but not necessarily to be an expert in spraying 5 different pesticides for 5 different insects. Not necessarily an expert in how to prune the tree and what we create.
And this is the role of the manager.
Right.
I think the role of the entrepreneur is to predict, like he's predicting what the demand for apples is going to be 5 or 10 years from now. So he might not know how to grow apples, but that's his job.
My point is just that the line between manager and entrepreneur is not a clear cut. So I don't really understand who is the manager for handling and where is the manager for handling and where is the entrepreneur. So it's like not two clear roles.
Well, it's not a cut. There's an overlap. These are 3 general areas, and like the professor was saying, it could be one person, but those 3 roles, the manager is the day-to-day manager. And like Keith says, when I hire a lathe operator, I don't have to be an expert lathe operator, but I have to know enough about the lathe to see that this guy knows how to run it, and that guy is not. So I hire this guy, and then I let him run it. The manager has to do the day-to-day stuff, and he's closest to the running of the business. But he's not the one making the big decisions, like how many apple trees to buy.
So the brain is the entrepreneur.
In a way,
It's the hand.
well,
So the entrepreneur conceives the opportunity, the capitalist finances the opportunity, and the manager makes sure it actually becomes a fact, that it comes from concept to actual fact.
Everything starts with the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I mean, without an entrepreneur, nothing happens.
Yeah.
Basically,
that's the
the
definition.
entrepreneur has the idea, but I disagree with what's been said there about knowledge. Knowledge has to be everywhere. If you have a weak, I would say, if you have a weak manager or if you have a weak, not a good capitalist, or if anything, because even if you have the best entrepreneur, they might not be as successful. I mean, they're all important.
So the best.
But knowledge in the respective role, as a capitalist, be a knowledgeable capitalist, be a knowledgeable manager. And the entrepreneur, I think, has to have the skill of finding the right manager. That's knowledge of the entrepreneur. So the knowledge has to be everywhere.
Yeah, Louis, the
Without the entrepreneur, nothing happens, I think. Is that right?
Yes.
The capitalist has to choose the entrepreneur. Where is he going to put his money?
It's the entrepreneur that chooses the capitalist, I think.
Well, he hopes.
I think clever capitalist chooses the right thing.
Yeah, well,
So it's everything, everybody has to do the best, really.
Yeah, you can't define anything without each individual part. So yes, the entrepreneur is important, but nothing exists without all three. You know, the full complement. Yeah.
Well, it's division of labor.
Yeah.
Really. Okay. What was Peter?
Peter, please make your point.
Well, I'm running a bit ahead of schedule. If I can borrow that pen.
Yes.
Clarify. Thank you. Now, I'm running ahead, as I said, but in a few days I'm going to introduce the hexagonal model. At the moment, I'll start with the square model. And we have already seen from this discussion what the different roles are. Here we have an axis of, let's say, just time progressing in the sense of the arrow. And we have here the annuitant, as you define it, which is a person at the beginning of his career. And here we have the annuitant with a T, which is the older person. Now, to make it a bit more abstract, but in fact summarizing the discussion and the position, this person is long income and short wealth. This person is long wealth and he's short of income. Here we have what the professor calls the inventor. It's an abstract name. You may also put that into the category of the manager. And here we have the entrepreneur. And so we come to a square model. But these roles are in fact best described by saying, okay, this inventor, manager, he is short of income and he is long future wealth, and the entrepreneur is short future wealth, and I think it's long income.
Long present.
The entrepreneur.
No, sorry, he's short income also, and he's long future wealth. He's got future wealth. Now, of course, the capitalist is just a role. We can say this is the capitalist, but later on we'll put an in-between there with the capitalist, and then we have a pentagonal model, and in comes the investment broker. I'm just running a bit ahead here. Or the merchant banker, and he deals then with all other five corners. But you could describe these roles in terms of long and short income, wealth, present wealth, wealth and future wealth. Do you see? You could divide them a little bit like that. It makes it more abstract. I'll give a presentation in a few sessions about that, making it a lot more visual. And I think the manager belongs there. Now, obviously,
maybe the role of the manager was not clear for me. Because for me, it's I think there is a Chinese saying that if you want to have a man with a hungry man, you can just give him fish. But if you really love this man, teach him how to fish. And I think vast capital, you are not risking his all his knowledge, because you can give it and you won't get less knowledge. So if you are really bad,
I want to continue because that's important.
yes.
and you can go anytime, in any second, because you have the knowledge how to do it.
There's three things that are necessary conditions, and every single one of them is insufficient. Intangible capital, tangible capital, and the third is credit. Obviously, the intangible capital is knowledge, know-how. Tangible capital, you need physical money. And of course, the credit you also need. No credit means zero interest, which we'll see here. And then with zero interest, there is no incentive for him to give this person credit, because he can just as well dishoard. Now, if he dishoards at the rate of 1% or 0.5%, he needs to, this person needs to offer him more than at what rate he can dishoard. So he needs to be above that person's dishoarding rate, above 1% or 0.5%, in order to give him the incentive. Right? And that's when you start going from zero to above zero. No credit means zero interest.
Okay. Can we move
we're
on?
running ahead.
Okay.
I realize that it's time, but I cannot cut it off at this point because this is very important. I want to see the feedback. So the summary of all this is that there is always, in every business enterprise, there is always somewhere an exchange of, or say, conversion between income and wealth. It may not be obvious. You may have to dig for it to find. But it's absolutely important that in a complex situation as well as in a very simple situation where it's one-man business enterprise, that you identify this and you break down the process of production into 3 departments. I yesterday introduced the word bond holding department. Some enterprises calls it the treasury or treasurer of the business. And then the entrepreneurial department and the managerial department. And it's important to see these 3 parts of the enterprise. Whether it's a one-man operation or it's a very complex industrial enterprise, this is at least that much please take with you, because that's the important message. So butt in with your questions. So I boiled down this whole problem, which you could call the paradox of interest, to the principle of triple entry revenue accounting. It's 4 words, perhaps you can invent a shorter, but I like this because it connotes or connotates with the double entry bookkeeping, which has been around for hundreds of years, you see. And now, I'm going to read how I would state it, but please, even while I'm reading, interrupt with your questions. It's very important that you should understand. It's in italics at the bottom of this page, and there's a caption, triple entry revenue accounting. Have you found it? Okay, I'm going to read the principle, and please interrupt. I'm asking you, because this is the whole point of that chapter, which I think is very important. The principle of triple entry revenue accounting states that the capitalist who buys and successfully manages his own capital goods will carry 3 accounts. So we assume this is a one-man operation. Carry 3 accounts in order to distribute the total net revenue, always after depreciation, of his enterprise, namely in order of seniority, moving from the senior to the junior. 1. Interest account. Number 2. Managerial compensation account. And number 3. The entrepreneurial profit account. Whereas insufficient revenues affect the junior before affecting the senior accounts, all surpluses accrue to the junior profit account, which is the entrepreneurial account. See? So this is what